So let's start a brand new tractate, Masechta, and we're going to do Masechta Moed Katan. Moed Katan means the minor holiday because the laws that we're talking about over here are laws of Choil HaMoed, the intermediary days of the Yom Tov. So you have the Moed itself, and then you have the Moed Katan, the small Moed. That's the Chol HaMoed. And that's basically the laws that are going to be discussed in this tractate. We will see that it is an interesting phenomenon that while the Torah, Rashi brings it down, while the Torah tells you not to do any work on Yom Tov itself, the intermediary days, the Moed Katan, over there, the Torah sort of left it up for the sages to decide what is the work that you could do and what is the work that you cannot do. So that's the laws that we're going to be discussing. Okay, now we'll start with the Mishnah. The rabbis allowed to do work that they deemed necessary, and if you don't do it, you can suffer a great loss. So in order to avoid and protect you from a great loss, the Chachamim allowed you to do certain works, provided that it doesn't get too involved. That's going to be some of the details of our Mishnah, discussing very specific kinds of works. So the first thing the Mishnah starts off with, Mashkin Beis HaShalochin B'Moed. Mashkin means water. You can water. You can water a Beis HaShalochin. Beis HaShalochin references a field which doesn't hold the water because it's on a mountainous area. So the water, the rain that comes down, doesn't have a chance to fully be absorbed and to really saturate the ground so that it grows well. I think it's called, Shalachim, it sends away. It's a place, it's a room, it's an area that sends away the rainwater. It doesn't hold it, it doesn't contain it. So therefore, it needs more than just the rainwater. If we're talking about an ordinary field that absorbs the rainwater sufficient for it is enough, then there's no reason and you can't water it. But a Beis HaShalachim, an area that doesn't hold the rainwater, and if you're not going to water it during the Moed Katan, during the festival, during Chol HaMoed, you're going to end up having a big loss because you need to water it constantly. So the Chachamim allowed you b'Moed. Moed means during the Chol HaMoed, the Chachamim says, fine, you can go ahead and you can water that field. Now, the way they water the field wasn't really a very big job. As we're going to see, various different ways of watering the field. Basically, what they would do, they would have a well nearby, and they would build a trench from the well to the field. And the way they would water the field, they would open up, they had a block in the trench that wouldn't allow the water to the field. They'd open up the block, and then the water would overflow and would flood the field, give it the water that it needs. So you can do this on Moed, on Chol Moed. Let's do the Rashi. Mashkin beis hashalochim b'moyed. Zokt Rashi, Mashkin beis hashalochim b'moyed. Zokt Rashi, we're talking about a sodeh shehi oimedes bahor, a field which is standing on a mountain. V'tzorich lehashikoiso tamid, and you need to always water it because it doesn't hold the rainwater, so you need to always water it. So therefore, you're allowed to do mashkin oiso afilu b'choyled shel moyed. You can water that field even in choyled shel moyed. A lot of it. Why? The reason is lifi shahu loy hefsed godel, because that is a big loss to him. He's losing his field, the crops is not going to grow well. So the Chachamim allowed the Lefi shu loy hefsed godel im einoi mashke oiso. If he didn't water it, the field, he would have a big loss. The davar shel hefsed hitiru Chachamim, a matter of a loss. The Chachamim permitted litroyach boi to trouble yourself to work with it on Chol Moed. What is the basis? It says, we find the Masechet Chagiga, the Ksiv. So over there, the pasuk equates. It says like this in Dvarim Perik Yuzayim: Sheishes Yomim Toichal Matzos. 6 days eat matzahs. On the 7th day, it should be holding back, meaning no work, hold back from work for the name of Hashem your God. So in this pasuk, we have sort of an equation. 6 days it's matzah, and the 7th day stop doing work. There is a comparison, an equation between the 6th and the 7th day. So therefore, what do we learn from this? That just like on the 7th day, the Torah says stop doing work. Also, the 6 days of Chol Moed should also be held back from doing work. The Gemara continues, well, imashvi atzur b'chol melocha, af shisha atzurim b'chol melocha. So you might think that just like the 7th day when it says atzeres l'Hashem elikecha, you are not allowed to do any kind of work. All work is prohibited. Of course, except ochel nefesh, which is permitted, what you need for food, for cooking. But we're talking about just regular other work not associated. It's also maybe we should say that the 6th day, since you're comparing it to the 7th day, that should be totally prohibited doing malacha. So no work should be done on Chol Moed. Talmud Loima, that's why the pasuk says here, Hashvi. It says clearly, and on the 7th day, if they're all, why does the Torah single out the 7th day if they're all asur b'malacha? If it's equated, so they're all asur b'malacha, so why do we single out? It says Vayom Hashvi, Shvi atzor b'chol malacha, that it was only the 7th day that you have to stop doing all work, but ve'ein shish atzur b'chol malacha. But the other 6 days are not. You don't have to stop from all work. So what do we do? On one hand, we see that the Torah equates them. That's some malacha you can't do. On the other hand, some malacha you could do because the Torah only prohibits the 7th day of doing malacha. So the way we resolve it is Holemosron Hakosuf Elo Lachachomim Loimerlach. The Torah gave this over to the sages to tell you Ezu Melocha Asura B'Choil Loishel Moed Ve'ezu Meteres, which work is prohibited on Choil Moed and which is permissible. And therefore, the rabbis said, if it's a job that there will be a loss if you don't do it, as kigoin lahashkis beis hashalochim, as the case of watering this beis hashalochim, which doesn't hold the water, hitiru chachomim, that was permitted by the chachom. So here you have it. So that's the reason the chachomim allowed things that were a loss. They deemed it that it's a loss, provided that it's not going to be too much trouble, as we will see later on in the Mishnah. Now, the Mishnah adds also Bashvis on the seventh year. We know that on the seventh year, you're not allowed to work the fields, the ground. But yet, the Chachamim allowed to water the field of the Beis HaShalachim so that it's not a full loss. We'll see in the Gemara, because this field needs water. You need to water it in order to preserve it. So also on the seventh year, while we're not allowed to do work, but this work of watering the Beis HaShalachim with the Chachamim allowed. Now, the Mishnah says specifically, how do you water it? We're going to see, you can't water it by taking buckets of water in places where there's a collection of waters and taking from those buckets and filling it the field with water, because that would be too much trouble. Here we're talking about, as I said before, they have a well and they create a trench from the well to the field. And when we say that you water it, we're talking about opening up the trench, the stopper, and then the water floods the field and you get the water there. That's allowed. You're not allowed, as we'll see soon, to go ahead and fill buckets. That's considered too much labor intense to allow for Chol HaMoed. Now, the trenches, the Mishnah says, can be in two scenarios. The Mishnah talks about one scenario is that you don't have a regular trench over there. Over there, you have a trench that recently was discovered, let's say. So that means that the trench itself has not yet been fully established. The trench itself could fall down. If it'll fall down, if it won't work well, it might lead you to doing more work. It doesn't matter. So the Mishnah says like this: Bain, you can water it, whether it's mimayon sheyotzo bitchila, whether it's just a well that has just come out. Now we found a new well, and you are leading the trench over there, and it's never made its way there yet, so that it's not been established. It's easier to come to work. Or bein mimayin shelo bitchila, or you're having it from a well has never gone out before. It's the very first beginning that the well is starting to work. Bein mimayin shelo bitchila, which means it's a well that has not just come out now. Elamayin naveya mizman meruba, but there is a long time a well over there, and it's been well established. And you can draw from both places to water your field. Now, the Gemara is going to discuss right after the Mishnah, well, if you're allowed to water it from a new well, that has just gone out and it's not been established yet, and there is more chance that you might have to work harder to get it to go. And if that is okay, why does the Mishnah have to say also that you can water it from a well that has been established a long time? It seems obvious. It seems like a kal vachomer. If you can do with a new well, you should certainly be able to do it with the well that was from before. But we'll see. The Gemara is going to ask this question, and the Gemara is going to explain. But as far as we know right now, any of these wells, a new one or an old one, whether you have already an established path to your field or it's not been established yet, you are allowed to do that and use that well to water your field, your Beis HaShalachim. Avol ein mashkin, but you cannot water. These two wells are okay, but you cannot water this Beis HaShalachim on Chol HaMoed loy mimei hageshamim, not from the rainwater. Now, we'll see here like this. This is an interesting halacha the Gemara will explain. Mei geshamim also sometimes, even if they come, this regular rainwater, meaning that if you have a collection of rainwater, and even if you have a collection of rainwater coming into this trench, let's say you have a pit of water and you create a trench from that pit to your field, and that water waters, the water that rains then eventually goes to the trench and comes to your field, you can't use that. But simply make shamim would mean that you have to actually fill it up with the buckets. And so the Rashi says, "Lo make shamim mishum the izbei tircha yisera kedemafarish b'gemara," because there is too much trouble in watering this Beis HaShalachim from the rainwater, as will be explained by the Gemara. Basically, even though there's a loss, but there's still a limit to what the Chachamim will allow you. They'll only allow you for a situation where there's not too much work on Chol HaMoed, as the Gemara will explain. But like I said, the Gemara will also say that the Me'ach Shamim, even if it already falls into a trench, and because the Chachamim were afraid that you're not going to have enough water for the rainwater, that you might start filling it by hand. Either way, there's a lot of trouble there, so we don't do that. The loy mimei hakiloin. Kiloin seems to be also a deep pit which has water. But sure, there's in a deep pit, and that's a lot of trouble to draw water from it. Chol HaMoed, it's also. We'll see the Gemara also, but this is similar to the rainwater. That's also water. Mei hakilain. Those over there. How does the water come to the mei hakilain? That is our water. They store water over there. It's not. Maybe it's not only rainwater. We'll see in the Gemara. Another thing the Mishnah says. So basically, you can open up the trenches to have the water your fields, but you can't draw. You can't with buckets. You can't do that. That's too much trouble. Further, the Mishnah says, "Ve'ein oisin ugiyos legefanim." Gefanim are vines. They used to make these trenches around ugiyos. That's like a circle around where the vine grows. They make a circle, a trench, so the water should stay and water these vines. So those are these ugiyos. So we say vein oisin ugiyos legefanim. You don't make on Chol HaMoed this irrigation trenches, because to create them is a lot of trouble. if they're there is one thing, but there is too much work to make those trenches around the vines. Now, Rabbi Lezer ben Azariah said, "En oisin esa omo." Omo, as you see, was commonly used to bring water. That was a cubit, an amma. A trench with a width of one amma, one by one. That would be the. So before we were talking about the trenches there, a new trench, an old trench. He was talking about to go ahead and dig a trench. So you can't do that to begin with. You can't start a trench on Moed, on Chala Moed, and on Shviz. You're not allowed to do that. Because that's considered to be too much trouble to go create a new trench. But the Chachamim disagree. They said, Oisin as Amma B'tchila B'Shviz, that on Shviz, not on Chalamoyed, but Shviz, they say that you could go ahead and make the Amma. We'll see in the Gemara also, maybe because in Shviz there's a whole year. Over here, you're just going to wait till after Chalamoyed to dig your trench. Or you can dig it before, but maybe by Shviz, is not so much choices over there, so that's why he said. But he makes a distinction between the seventh year b'Shviz and Chalamoed. That's according to the Chacham. Further, the Mishnah says, "Umisaknin es hamikul kolis." Those trenches that have been ruined, the Moed and Chalamoyed, you can go ahead and fix. Let's say it's not deep enough; it's filled with stones. You can fix it on Yom Tov, even though he said you can't make a trench to begin with on Chalamoyed, but to fix an existing trench, you could do on Yom Tov. I'm wondering, is this this is apparently everybody's opinion, Rabbi Lezer ben Azariah and the Chachamim, because there was no disagreement about not making on Chalamoyed a trench. The only disagreement was about Shviz, and here we're talking about Chalamoyed. So while you're not allowed to make a trench, but it seems like everybody will agree that those trenches that were ruined, you can go ahead and fix them on Chalamoyed. Another thing you're allowed to do is also misaknin es kilkule hamayim. So sometimes the water, they would store water in these pits, and they get ruined. There's either stones fell into the pit. Got to clean it out, so you can do it if the water. The water pits have been ruined, that are in the public domain, and that's the use for the public. So we allow you to trouble yourself to clean them out. But it says you're not allowed to dig in deeper. You can fix them, and you can sort of pick up the dirt and the stones, but not to dig over there. So you can go ahead. That means choitutin. That's why it qualifies it. You can fix the ruined waters in the Rishus Harabim by way of choitutin, by picking up the stones and everything else, but not digging into the ground. That would be too much tirah. Further, you can fix up the roads. What is it talking about, fixing the roads? We're not talking about a pavement job over here. Or a big job. We're talking about there are thorns, there's things on the roads. People go by, so you can fix the roads on Chalamoy. And also with the Rechayvus. Rechayvus is the area where the people of the city sit in the squares of the city. So you're allowed to clear it up there. Also, best mikvahs hamayim. Those are mikveh waters to keep it clean. Talking about people, you have stones and other stuff falling into the mikveh water, so you can clean them up so people can use the mikveh. The oisin kol tzorchei harab, and you can do all the needs of the community, as the Gemara will explain. What is this coming to include? And further, umitzainin es hakvoris, that you can make the signs for the caver, for the burial places. The way they used to do it, they used to have, we have a matzeva, you have a tombstone, but sometimes you have people buried in different places, and you don't know there's no tombstone there. So they used to use lime, and they used to make a sign. This is a place where there's a grave. That's not such a troubling job. You need to know where a caver, you're not allowed to step on the caver. The Kohen needs to know where there's a caver. So you're allowed to do the making out the signing, making a sign for these kvoris, that's allowed. And finally, the Mishnah says the yotzin, and the Beis Din will go out afal hakilayim, also for the purpose of kilayim, to making sure that there's no kilayim, there's no mixtures of the vine and the grain, and to make sure that everybody is, and that's a job for the Beis Din. They go out also during the Chalamayid. All right, so that's the Gemara. So now we had in the Mishnah these two cases. One case, it says you can use the well that has been established, the trench, for a long time. You can also use the trench that is just started now. The well just started. The trench is just made now. You can use them. So the Gemara doesn't understand. If we allow you to use a trench that was made now, which is more likely that it'll fall in and it'll bring you to do more work, and we say that it's okay, why does the Mishnah have to say that you're also allowed to water the Beis HaShlachim from a trench that has been there from a well from a long time? Let's look inside. Hashdo yesh loiman. Since now there is to say, mimayin sheyotzer b'tchila. We say that when we have a well, that this is coming out now. And in that case, the osilin puli, it might fall down. And Rashi explains, why might it fall down? The osilin puli. Hakarko sheseviva, the ground that's around it can fall in. Why? She has not yet held on to that path. It's just a new well, so things can fall down. And the Mishnah says mashkin, that you can water from that well. Mashkin b'chayla shel moed, we can water it on chayla moed. V'lo yichashinon, and you don't worry. Dilma nofil, maybe it's going to fall down. Maybe it's going to fall down. And then, Torah tirchi yisera, and then he's going to go and trouble himself, extra trouble. Why don't you worry about that? And you say that it's okay. So so if you have a well that has never gone out, I'm sorry, it's not the first time that it's going out. It's been over there for a while. That he's already established the path. So there's nothing to worry that anything falling down. The lo yosilin pulley is not going to come to fall down. Miboyi, do you have to tell us that you can water? Miboyi the mashki mimenu b'chaylo shamoyed. Do you need to tell us that you can water it on chaylo shamoyed? Seems to be obvious. And the Gemara says, Amri, I will give you an answer. Itzrich, why we need it. What is the counter, the opposite of a Beis HaShalochim? That's called the Beis Habal. The Beis Habal is called the field which is in the valley. The water sits there all the time. All of this leniency we have in our Mishnah is because we're talking about Beis HaShalochim. We're talking about a field on a mountain which doesn't hold the water, and there's going to be a loss. But we're not going to allow you to do this if it's a Beis Habal where there is plenty of water. So the Gemara answers. But the Mishnah wants to write both so that you don't make a mistake. Because if the Mishnah only said the case where there is a new well, that you can do it, so you would think, and that what you can't do in the field which is on the valley, because there might be a lot of tircha. But a established trench that is going all the time already from a well, maybe you can do that also in a valley, because what's the big deal? So that's why he writes both cases to tell you they both can be done in a Beis HaShalochim, and they both cannot be done in a Beis Habal. Look inside. The Gemara answers. Had he written just a Mayan Sheyotza B'tchilo, then Havamina, I would say, Hocha, in this case, in the case of a new well, which has not been established, who the Beis HaShalochim in Beis Habal, you can only do it in the field on the mountain and not in the field on the valley. Why? Because in the valley we're afraid we're not going to let you do it because you might go ahead and build the trench up again because it's a new Mayan. Rashi explains, Beis Habal Sodahu Be'emek. That's a field which is on the depth. Ve'ein tzorich lahashkoiso, it doesn't need to water it. You don't need to water it. Ve'ein bo hefsedin ein mashke oiso. There's no loss if you don't water it. So the only reason we allow you is because it might come to fall down. So why are we limiting and saying that you can only do it in a Beis HaShalochim on the mountain and not in the valley? Because we don't want you to use a well that is just coming out now, hasn't yet established. You might want to fix it later on. Avol mayon shelo yotza b'tchilo. But when we're talking about a well that has not coming out the first time it's been established, and therefore the loyosilin puli, and it's not destined. It's not going to fall. Why? It's been running there for a long time. Maybe you would think in a Beis Habal you can do it also. Not a problem. So if the Mishnah wouldn't be talking about a Mayon that has been from before, it would only be talking about a Mayon that came out now, you would think, but if it's a Mayon that has been established already, doesn't matter. Even in a Beis Habal, you should be able to use it. Kamash Malon. That's why he comes to teach us. Who? Masnisin. The Tony, Bain, Memayin Shelo Yotzu B'tchila. Tells us whether it's a well that has not come out in the beginning, which means it's an old well, that there too, you're not going to be allowed to do it in a Beis Habal. That Loishno Mayin Sheyotza B'tchila. It makes no difference whether the well has been before, meaning you have an established path. That doesn't have an established path. It doesn't make a difference. Mayan, which is just coming out now. Makes no difference if it has already an established path. It's not the first coming out now. Beis Hashlachin Ein and Beis Habal Loi. Only a Beis Hashalachim you're allowed to water in either event, but a Beis Habal in the valley, Loi, you're not allowed to do it. And that's why we need both, because otherwise you'll make the mistake. Beis Hashlachim Ein Rashi, Beis Hashlachim Beis Habal, Afilu mimayin shelo yotzu b'tchila Loi. Even if it's an old established, it's a Mayan that has not yet just started, you're not allowed to run it.
What's Rashi telling us here? Isn't that what the Gemara just told us?
Good question. What is Rashi adding to what the Gemara said? Beis Hashlachin Ein Beis Habal. Rashi just clarifies it. I hear you. I have to go think about it. It's beyond the scope over here. We're learning right now. Just trying to go through the Taichin over here. But okay, we have to see what is Rashi. Rashi adds the word afilu to tell you that the Chiddush is, in the Lashon of the Gemara, it says loishno, loishno. Makes no difference. But they're not equal. What we're trying to tell you that the Beis Habal, we wrote it, is that even if it's a Mayin Shelo Yotzu B'tchila, still you're not allowed to water the Beis Habal in the valley. You're not allowed to do it. The Rashi corrects so that you don't make a mistake. It's not because to teach us the reason why the Mishnah needed to write that case is precisely to tell you that feeling Mayin Shelo Yotzu B'tchila, a Beis Habal you can't do. So now the Gemara asks me, my mashma, the high Beis Hashlochin, lishna d'tzachusehi. Not like I said before, shlochim means that it sends the water down. The Gemara says, what is the meaning of the word that we're saying that Beis Hashlachim is a language of thirst, tzachusohi? Meaning it's a thirsty field that wants sashlochim, it wants to drink all the time, it needs to drink. Beis hashlochim lishne de tzachusei. Where do we see this? The Gemara brings a pasuk. The Ksiv says in the pasuk, "Va'ato oyef v'yogea," and you are tired and tired and worked and overworked, worked a lot of effort. Targiminos, how do we translate the word va'at? That's va'at and you. Mishalhi, the word oyev is dried out, and it's even oyev, a tired, parched, maybe the parched land. Mishali v'loi, parched and tired, meaning oyev yageh. This represents, so you see the word mishalhi, here it's shalchin. But Rashi says nishalhi, v'hei mischalev b'ches. You can substitute, change a hey for a ches. So it's mishalhi, it's mishalchin. So shalchin means basically a parched, dry, thirsty, tired land, needs water. What is the my mashma, the high Beis Habal? Where do we know that the language of Beis Habal is Lishna Demais Vusahi? That's a language of settled in. There's a lot of water there. It sits in, saturated. The Ksiv, because the pasuk says Ki Yival Bachur Besula, when a boy will be intimate with the Besula, it says Umitargeminon Are Kimodi Metoisav Ulam Imbizulta. As a ulam, that's the bacher called an ulam. Mitoisav means settles with the besula. Yisyatzvun begaver b'nech. That's the end of the pasuk. So your children will settle in your. So that comes the lashon of settling. The word baal, the word baal means that level of intimacy called settling in. And that's called that the Yidden will settle into the land of Eretz Yisrael b'gavoch b'noich. Okay, so today, let's leave it over here today.